So I saw a report on X that the new Daredevil showrunner said Born Again will have a lot less navel-gazing than before. I was curious to know your thoughts. Yeah, so there's a quote. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. The showrunner for Daredevil said this in an interview. The earlier show, at its best, was fantastic. But at its worst, it was two characters in a room talking about what is a hero. I felt that had been done. I'm not taking swipes. I just didn't want to hear characters grousing about their lot in life. So a lot of us read that and we go, wait a minute. That's what we liked about Daredevil, that it was introspective. So much of what we loved about the show was the dialogue, and some of the most compelling stuff were characters just sitting there talking to each other. There's so many scenes from season 2 with Punisher and Daredevil talking about half measures, Karen talking to Frank. There's all this stuff. The dialogue was fantastic. Therefore, we enjoyed watching the characters sit there and navel gaze, if you want to put it that way, talking about what it means to be a hero. That wasn't a bug in the system. That wasn't to us the worst of the show. That was something we enjoyed about the show. And he continued on, elsewhere, and there's some people responding to me, pointed out, hey, he said other stuff. So this is the expanded quote that they said this would make me feel better. I really feel that Netflix's Daredevil, which I know in my blood, was much more noir, and this show is more New York crime story. It has elements of The Sopranos and Kings of New York. There's a feeling those classic 90s crime tales. It has a pace and a scope, for a lot of reasons, Netflix wasn't able to do. They were very dark cinematically, not necessarily story-wise, although there were some dark elements, were much darker. So that's the quote that people sent to me, and it was like, see, if you read the whole quote, it's much better. And I read that quote and I go, that's almost a better quote, but even in the quote that's supposed to give me confidence, he still throws shade at Netflix. In both of these quotes, in his way of describing what his show is offering that's fresh and new, he does it by using negative language about the previous show. At its worst, it's two characters in a room talking about what it is to be a hero. What? You don't have to use that language. You described something that I thought as a fan, and I know a lot of other fans thought was one of the things that elevated the show and made it much better than most of its peers in the genre. And you said that's the show at its worst. So right there, you feel very disconnected from me in what I enjoy about the show. That's concerning, because I had confidence because I watched the trailer and other things. I went, looks like you get it. It looks like you understand what I want. But the way you framed what you're bringing to the table is to put down something that I enjoyed. Not a great idea. The second quote, he says, it has a pace and scope that for a lot of reasons, Netflix wasn't able to do. So you kind of go, why are you phrasing it that way? Like, you're phrasing it, they couldn't do this. Like, we've got the right pace. We've got the scope. And many people think like, well, I didn't have issues with the pace of the Netflix show, and I liked the scope of that show. And like season 3 gets really, really big. So I don't like, I read those quotes and I go, huh? And it's not like it just hurts your confidence when it feels like the person creating the show is just on a totally different page from you on the show with the quotes that he's giving. Take the same concept he's trying to communicate. The idea that we're not pondering what it means to be a hero and it shifts from noir to crime story. You can say that. Like, I adored, like, he starts it off, he goes, you know, at its best, the previous show is fantastic. Like, it was this noir as a comic book show. It was very introspective with characters pondering what it means to be a hero with this great dialogue. And they did such a great job with it. What we don't want to do is rehash what they did or try and copy immediately what they did, because they already did it. So we want to like build off that foundation and where are the characters now several years down the road. That was noir. This one's going to be a little bit more of kind of a big New York City crime story, like inspired by The Sopranos. And it's bigger and it's taking everything that foundation that they build and just building on top of it and taking the character arcs to a different place because the characters are older and we want to build on their legacy. You say the same thing, but with positive language. We're building, not, I mean, at its worst, it was like two characters talking about what it means to be a hero. Like, we don't want to do that. What? Why did you frame it that way? So the quotes, like they put the trailer, I was like, man, looks like they're fixed. They brought in the right people that are on the same page of like, it's not the same thing, but like we're continuing it, how to expand it. And then you hear the quotes and there's a disconnect from what many fans of the original show, how they interpret that show, and this guy being like, at its worst, and they couldn't do this with the pace and the scope and the scale, or even on the pace, scope, and scale, like Netflix couldn't do this. Like you can frame that as, and one thing that's really cool is just, we're working with Disney and there's just more resources. That both because Daredevil was a proven property, that's become only more popular with time, and we have all of Disney's resources, so there's just all this new stuff that we can do. You say the exact same thing, and it's a positive to why you should be excited for this, rather than coming off like a slight towards the thing that many of us hold dearly. We thought it was great. So framing things as like, navel gazing, they couldn't do this. It's such an odd way to discuss it if you want us to be excited. So how much of this should we be worried? How much of this is Disney needs to take this guy aside and say, here's some media training. Like, here's how to frame things better. How do you like take the same concept and communicate it in a way that builds excitement rather than feeling like you're throwing shade? Which these comments, as much as, it's fantastic. Like I'm not trying to throw shade, but they're just people talking in a room. What comes off like shade? What are you talking about? I was growing in confidence in the show, but these quotes make me think they still are clueless what we loved about the show in the first place. The noir pacing and scale was what we liked. Exactly. Like, that's like with these quotes where it seemed like I had a bunch of people responding to me like, dude, you're like responding in bad faith. Like you're trying to find the worst interpretation of this possible. Like, no, I really want to be excited for this show. I'm looking for a reason to be excited about the show. And he made multiple statements where he singled out elements that were exactly why people liked that show, and he framed them as bad things, as flaws, as weaknesses, as shortcomings, things they weren't able to do. Specifically, pacing, scale, dialogue. Those are the things that people loved. And he went, the problems with it. That's concerning because it feels like, as Mr. Leach said, they're clueless as to what the fans actually liked. And that's what we like. It doesn't need to be strictly season 4. Like, I want it to be something new and a continuation, building it, like, okay. But to do that, to build on top of the foundation, you need to understand the foundation. And these quotes don't feel like they understand what we loved about the show. Most of these clips are pulled from my Patreon live streams. I do about 6 live streams every single month. For $2 per month, $20 per year, you can get access to all the exclusive videos and live streams. For $5 per month, you get your name on my end card. At the top tier, you get a 30-minute video chat with me each month. The link down below in the description has more information.